Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the St. Louis podcast. My name is Eric Brown, CEO at Vi Media and partner at Mogul Holdings. Today, we have a lot to talk about, and of course, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a few weeks since I last recorded. Summer's almost over, so we'll be back to recording weekly. And this fall, we should have some amazing updates for the podcast as well, which I will keep you guys tuned for. So a lot to talk about, ton to talk about. And I think we're going to have a little bit of a history lesson here today because I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole trying to figure out why this is even a thing in the first place. So I'm sure you guys saw a week or two ago now, Texas, the redistricting battle. And I'm going to talk about gerrymandering, the history of it. But first, let's get into the news story. On August 3rd, 2025, 37 Texas Democrats fled to New Mexico in a dramatic bid to prevent a quorum and block a Republican-led redistricting plan endorsed by President Trump that seeks to redraw congressional maps to create 5 additional GOP-leaning seats, thereby solidifying Republican dominance in Texas's 38-seat congressional delegation and amid shifting demographics. So, of course, we got Governor Greg Abbott intensified the standoff by petitioning the Texas Supreme Court to remove the Democratic caucus chair and involving the FBI in locating the absent lawmakers, raising alarms about federal interference in state affairs. During a press conference in Chicago, Democrats decried the plan as blatant voter suppression targeting minority communities, and the event was disrupted by a bomb threat at their hotel, heightening security concerns. The proposed maps could entrench GOP control for decades, particularly by diluting the influence of Texas's growing Hispanic and urban populations, which now constitute 40% of the state and tend to favor Democrats. The Texas Supreme Court rejected Abbott's intervention request, but he vowed to convene a special legislative session to force the issue, while Democrats initiated legal challenges under the Voting Rights Act, alleging discriminatory intent against minority voters and prompting national debates on electoral fairness. Meanwhile, governors in California and New York are considering retaliatory redistricting measures, though constrained by their state's independent commissions, adding to the partisan tension. So I saw this story, right? I saw all the outrage. I saw the lawmakers flooding. And I started thinking to myself, why is so-called gerrymandering and the allowance of, our congressional leaders, they're allowed to change. Obviously you've seen a map of your state's districts, and I'm sure they're very odd, as they are for most states, because regardless of where you're at, more of a Democrat-leaning state or more of a Republican-leaning state, you are going to have these states trying to fight for the dominance, of course, of their party and of their side, which means if they can, they're going to try and, of course, redistrict and change the maps in order to favor, their party, obviously. And this is, of course, is happening right now in Texas. And then, like I said, of course, before, we have California and New York talking about it. Now, why is this legal? So it's legal unless it's violating the Voting Rights Act. And the 2019 Rucho versus Common Cause Supreme Court ruling deemed partisan gerrymandering a political question beyond federal court review, leaving regulation to states. Of course, that's a problem because we just talked about how the states are the ones doing it. Texas lacks partisan gerrymandering limits, unlike California's commission. Parties gerrymander to maximize seats, protect incumbents, and counter demographic shifts, of course, like I just said. Obviously, how we have the parties looking at it. We have the Democrats. They're claiming the plan, of course, disenfranchises Hispanic voters, citing historical abuses like 2003's red map. The Republican cited as defending, reflecting Texas's conservative majority, accusing Democrats of obstruction. And then we could see, obviously, the divide online. So let's look at the history of gerrymandering, how long it's been used for, why it's legal, why we can use it. All right, so let's take it back. So gerrymandering is, of course, the manipulation of an electoral district boundaries to favor one political party or group. And it's been a feature of American politics since the nation's founding. So it's literally been around for hundreds of years now. The practice predates the term itself, with early examples in the late 18th century. For instance, in 1788, where there were attempts in states like North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina to draw districts that benefited specific candidates. Though these were relatively straightforward compared to later distortions. The term gerrymander originated in 1812 when Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, a Democratic Republican, signed a redistricting bill that created oddly shaped districts to advantage his party, which is, of course, what I was just talking about before, where if you go and whatever state you're in, you can, obviously, we have a lot of St. Louis listeners on this podcast, so look at Missouri. They're very oddly shaped. They're very oddly shaped, and that doesn't have a lot to do with population or anything like that. It's specifically built to help the party that is more so in charge, right, of that state and is specifically of that area. This allowed Jerry's party, with about 49% of the vote, to secure 29 out of 40 state Senate seats, though backlash led to Federalists regaining control and redrawing the maps in 1813. In the 19th century, gerrymandering intensified after the Civil War, particularly in the South, where it was used to dilute the voting power of newly enfranchised black men. Southern states drew long, winding districts to concentrate those black voters into single areas, ensuring white majorities elsewhere. So if you have, let's just say, for example, a total of, 30 districts, and if you're able to get, 10% of those people, 10% of the total state or 5% of the total state in just one district, obviously that is severely limiting their voting power when it comes to state representation, right? So notable examples include South Carolina's 1874 non-contiguous district, later reverted, and its 1882 boa constrictor district. Republicans also used gerrymandering nationally, such as admitting the Dakota Territory as two states in the late 1880s to gain electoral votes. Obviously, in the 20th century, in the 1960s, Supreme Court cases established federal oversight, such as Baker v. Carr. 1962 allowed courts to review redistricting. Westbury v. Sanders, 1963, required congressional districts to represent people equally. In Reynolds v. Sims, 1964, mandated one person, one vote for state legislators. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 prohibited racial gerrymandering, leading to cases like Miller v. Johnson, which struck down districts drawn primarily on racial lines. However, of course, as we know, to this day, partisan gerrymandering persisted, with cases like Davis-Bandemer and Veith v. Jubileer showing judicial division. Now, obviously, we're in the 2000s and we have a ton of data, as, of course, we've talked about on this podcast. And, of course, what they do is they feed this data for all of their electoral voter data, or just voter data in general, into a system, and they're able to redistrict and draw these maps to better favor, obviously, again, the party in charge. So now that, we have technology, we're able to do it even better. And of course, better should be in quotations, because it's really not better for anyone. The 2010 census cycle marked a turning point with the Red Map, Republicans Party Red Map Redistricting Majority Project, which targeted state legislators to control redistricting, flipping chambers, and drawing maps that favor the GOP. This led to skewed outcomes, such as in Wisconsin 2018, where Democrats won the popular vote, but only 36 of 99 assembly seats. So why is it legal? So it remains legal in its partisan form because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled it a political question outside the jurisdiction of federal courts. In the 2019 case, Rucho v. Common Clause, a 5-4 decision held that there is no objective constitutional standard to measure fairness in partisan districting, dismissing challenges to maps in North Carolina, Republican drawn, and Maryland, Democratic drawn. This built on earlier rulings like League of United Latin American Citizens versus Perry, which upheld most of Texas map while introducing concepts like partisan symmetry. However, not all gerrymandering is legal. Racial gerrymandering is prohibited under the Voting Rights Act in cases like Miller v. Johnson, which bar districts drawn predominantly on racial lines if they dilute minority voting power. States can still address partisan gerrymandering through their own courts or reforms, such as Pennsylvania State Supreme Court struck down a map in 2018. So, of course, both parties use it to their advantage, right? We know this. Both exploit gerrymandering, obviously, in order to control the redistricting process, typically in the state legislators themselves, to amplify their power beyond their vote share, right? Like we just talked about, what was that, in Wisconsin, where they, had a majority of popular vote, but only won, 33% of the state seats. So obviously Republicans have notably leveraged it since 2010 via red map. State legislators like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Obviously Democrats as well, like those in New York, Maryland, California. So it's a common thing. And it's ridiculous, but it sounds like obviously the federal court isn't going to do anything about it for the most part. It's left in kind of the state's hands at this point. Which, of course, like I just said, left in the state hands. Well, if the state is Republican or Democrat led, and there's no, checks and balances in order to make sure that these aren't redrawn improperly, where this is just going to continue to be an issue. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on gerrymandering. I'm sure this is probably the first time you heard someone talk about it since either, a wine night, or you're in, social studies in 9th grade. So we'll see where this ends up. All right. There's a lot of labor news. I'm going to talk about it. We got a lot of local news on labor as well. So let's just hop right into it. Of course, on August 1st, 2025, President Donald Trump fired Erica McIntyre. I'm just going to refer to her as Erica. She is the Commissioner of Bureau and Labor Statistics, mere hours after the release of the July jobs report, which revealed only 73,000 jobs added, far below the anticipated 153,000. With downward revisions of 115,000 jobs for May and June, causing the unemployment rate to climb to 4.3% from 4.1%. Trump publicly accused Erica of deliberately manipulating the data to sabotage his administration's economic narrative, claiming the figures were rigged without providing substantiating evidence, which ignited a firestorm among economists who argue that such accusations undermine the BLS's longstanding reputation for nonpartisan data collection. The American Statistical Association issued a strong statement labeling the firing a dangerous precedent that can compromise future economic policymaking. Public trust in BLS data has plummeted to 45% from 60% over the past decade, according to recent polls, exacerbating market volatility as investors question the reliability of key indicators. Of course, the reason that's important is if you can't trust the data, what are you making your decisions based off? The same thing goes for our marketing agency, Vibe Media, of course, in St. Louis. If you're not basing your marketing decisions off the data that is coming in, what are you basing your decisions off of? In St. Louis, where major employers like Boeing and Bayer depend on BLS data for workforce planning, local economists have reported a 10% decline in business hiring, Confidence sits as firing with fears that distorted data could lead to misguided investments and job cuts in the region's manufacturing and biotech sectors. Trump nominated economist Scott Bessent, a known administration loyalist, as interim BLS head, further fueling concerns of politicization as BLS rig trended on X with over 100,000 posts debating the integrity of future reports. The nomination has prompted calls from the Federal Reserve for safeguards to ensure data independence, while St. Louis business leaders express worries about potential biases affecting local economic forecasts. So I could tell you this, and of course, this is confirmation bias on my point, probably. But from talking to young people, specifically those that, let's say are out of college in their 20s, it is difficult to find a job in a ton of different sectors. And they're having to take jobs that they did not go to school for, even if they do have a degree that is actually useful, right? So, and of course, we've talked about in this podcast for, probably over the last year now, all of the companies that continue to lay people off. If it's through AI, all of the large companies we've talked about over the last year, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, you name them, they have had layoffs over the past year. The total percent of their workforce has decreased. And there's only 73,000 jobs added in July. Unemployment rate climbed to 4.3% from 4.1%. So we have a large percentage right now, and I was just trying to look this up. Obviously, we have the 4.3% unemployment rate. Now, here's part of the other issue. Right now, we have 102 million individuals in the U.S. that are currently not in the labor force. Now, obviously, 55 and over, that's 64 million of that 102 million. So, about 60%, give or take, of the 102 million individuals that are not working, are over 55. Now, here's where the issue becomes. 16 to 24 years of age. We have over 16 million people not in the labor force. So meaning they're not actively looking for jobs, are not included in that unemployment percentage. 25 to 54 years old, of course, prime working age, almost 22 million people not in the labor force. So we have, 35, 36, 37 million individuals from ages 16 to 54 not in the labor force. And of course, if those people, even a smaller percentage of those people, enter the labor force, obviously that unemployment rate will only climb because, as we know, there's not that many job spots to fill. And especially if you're, you don't have a lot of experience, it's going to make that a very difficult experience. So, right, we have this. Now, of course, since we're in St. Louis, we should talk about both Boeing and also Bayer. Now, on August 6, 2025, Bayer revealed plans to eliminate 12,000 jobs globally, including an estimated 500 to 1,000 at its U.S. headquarters in Creve Coeur, as part of a restructuring effort to counter an 8% decline in agricultural chemical sales and a $10 billion in ongoing Roundup litigation settlements that have strained the company's finances. St. Louis's biotech industry, which employs over 20,000 people and generates $1.2 billion annually, is reeling from the announcement, with the Cortex innovation community reporting a 5% drop in job applications and local unions expressing concerns about talent exodus to competing hubs like Boston and San Diego. Love those cities. The layoffs target obviously a lot more expensive. The layoffs target administrative and research roles, potentially hindering innovation in crop science and pharmaceuticals, sectors vital to Missouri's economy. Workers have voiced frustration on X about insufficient severance and retraining support amid broader 2025 trends of corporate downsizing. On August 10th, Bayer redirected $200 million towards AI-driven research and development initiatives, which could mitigate some job losses by creating new tech-focused positions, but requires significant reskilling for affected employees, with St. Louis County struggling to provide adequate retraining programs due to budget limitations. So, we have Bayer on their heels. And of course, no surprise they're, dumping money into AI. Why not? And everyone else is. Might as well figure out how to innovate it in with your business. And obviously, I'm sure, create a service line for that. But, retooling some of these people to, go into that, I just don't see that as a big way that's going to somehow happen to those 500 to 1,000 people in St. Louis. I mean, what's the percentage of those people that can actually be reskilled into that AI-driven research? I would assume the majority would not be able to. So long-term, obviously, Bayer's cuts could weaken St. Louis's biotech hub, reducing innovation and taxes. Diversification is needed. Of course, we got Boeing as well. We got Boeing on August 4th, 2025. Over 3,200 Boeing workers affiliated with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District 837, initiated strike at facilities in St. Louis, St. Charles, Missouri, and Muscuda, Illinois, after overwhelmingly rejecting a proposed 4-year contract that offered a 20% wage increase, enhanced health benefits, and a $5,000 signing bonus. These workers responsible for assembling critical defense aircraft, including the F-15, F-A-18, T-7 trainer, and the new F-47 jet, are demanding higher compensation to align with Boeing's $6 billion in defense revenue and to offset the 12% inflation rise since 2022, citing issues like burnout, inadequate scheduling, and safety concerns. The strike, has halted the F-47 production, jeopardizing $1.2 billion in U.S. Air Force contracts and causing immediate supply chain disruption. In St. Louis, where Boeing employs over 15,000 people and contributes $3.8 billion to the local economy, the action is estimated to cost $50 million weekly. Wow. Affecting indirect jobs in hospitality, logistics, and retail sectors. Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg described the contract as generous, but union leaders argue it fails to address long-term worker grievances, leading to picket lines and community support rallies. Now, mediation sessions resumed but ended without resolution, with workers continuing to picket, and this was, as of yesterday, continuing to picket outside, as of Monday, August 4th, outside the St. Charles plant, and Boeing reported $20 million in accumulated losses from delayed deliveries, prompting Missouri's governor to urge a swift settlement amid fears of broader economic ripple effects. Of course, on this podcast, before, we have talked about Boeing, and we have talked about how in the past they had a very well sought out retirement package, or was it not retirement? You know what I'm talking about if you're listening right now. And they've severely limited or essentially gotten rid of a lot of that. So of course their retirement benefits have been wiped. So in turn, obviously they need to get paid more. And this has been an ongoing discussion now, I believe, for over a year. But really ever since they went back, and it changed a lot to what they're doing with, retirement benefits for Boeing's employees. So we have Boeing. The prolonged strike could, of course, lead to layoffs or production shifts, weakening St. Louis's defense sector. It mirrors 78,000 tech layoffs in 2025. So obviously this is a big news for St. Louis. And it's not, it's hurting obviously Boeing, but it's also hurting St. Louis by them being on strike. So we should definitely figure this out. I don't know how much Kelly Ortberg makes. Let's just look up Kelly Ortberg compensation Boeing. Equity-based incentives, so total compensation $18.4 million. It sounds like that's going to be over 3 to 4 years. So Kelly, you're making a good amount of money. Let's go ahead and figure this out. Let's figure it out. All right. Second thing, and really tying into what I was just talking about, mass layoff surge to post-COVID high, according to an August 12th, 2025 report from Challenger Gray and Christmas. It's a sick last name. July saw 62,000 jobs cut. And of course, as we just talked about, we know that there was 75,000 jobs created. So only a net increase of 13,000. Not very much. I don't know how many people enter the job market every single month, but I would assume it'd probably be more than that, but I could be incorrect. Marking a 29% increase from June and 140% splurge from July 2024, bringing the 2025 total to 806,383 layoffs, exceeding all of 2024 so far. So far this year, as of August 12th, we have exceeded job layoffs of the entirety of 2024 last year, and the highest since the 2020 COVID peak of 1.8 million. The wave is fueled by President Trump's DOGE initiative, which has eliminated almost 300,000 federal jobs, alongside corporate restructuring and AI adoption, contributing to 10+ thousand tech-related cuts affecting sectors like government, tech, and retail. In St. Louis, like I just talked about, the biotech and retail industries, including recent bare reductions, have seen a 7% workforce contraction, with local job fairs experiencing 30% more attendees. Wow. Let me say that again. Local job fairs experiencing 30% more attendees amid fears of prolonged unemployment. New York's program to rehire DOGE displaced workers highlights Missouri's lack of similar support, exasperating regional disparities. Economists, describe it as late cycle cost discipline, but warn of rising unemployment if trends continue. So like I just said, in St. Louis, job fairs report 30% more attendees. Employers are, of course, laying people off, citing AI and tariffs, of course, for cost saving. And as AI continues to get better, I only see that continuing to hurt those that are being hurt the most over the last couple of years, which again are those that don't have a lot of experience and those that are younger. Because of course the jobs and really the to-dos of a lot of these AI programs that companies are implementing are doing some more of the basic, infrastructure and operations, right? Things like that, that really, you'd hire a new person on and they'd be able to handle a lot of that stuff. But now, of course, that job or a majority of that job has been taken away, by AI and AI agents being able to handle that workload. And now essentially you just have to have a babysitter, which could be a developer overseeing all of the different programs that a company uses. So I see developers specifically understanding the AI space going to be very dominant here over the next, I don't even know, long time. So, ton of layoffs. We got a 5% unemployment spike could strain St. Louis's social services. AI-driven layoffs require reskilling, again, for what we just talked about above. We talked about in April how, you need to have a job focus and need to understand job security. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, I believe it's April 25th of this year. And since we're talking about AI, it continues to get better and better. Obviously, everyone has the recommendation for platforms to use. I will say that just from a standpoint of large language models and things like that, that I use Grok and Perplexity specifically for more so search-based. And then I use Anthropic Claude, for more of the project-based stuff, right, that I'm doing. So I would suggest, if you're new into your field, if it doesn't even matter if you own a company, if you're an employee of a company and you see AI creeping into your field or it's already there, get ahead of the ball, figure out how to use that, figure out how to make yourself more valuable by being able to utilize those tools and bring more value to the company instead of being passed up by either other people at the company or by these AI programs themselves. You don't know how to use them, and then it takes your job and you're shit out of luck. So I would highly recommend whatever industry that you're in, going and figuring out how to implement tools and AI tools into your business and even just for yourself, an employee, how to use those tools. Go to management and say, hey, I think, being able to utilize some of this stuff using these things is going to be able to make, my job and the company, obviously, more money, more streamlined, whatever it is. Obviously, as of this month, the AI landscape has seen explosive growth with major advancements in model capabilities, enterprise adoption, and government integration, driven by competition among key players like OpenAI, Anthropic, and, of course, Google. OpenAI unveiled ChatGPT-5 on August 7th, a multimodal model excelling in reasoning, coding, and content creation. Integrated across its plans and outperforming predecessors and benchmarks, though raising concerns about safety and competition. Anthropic, of course, released Claude Opus 4.1, enhancing agentic tasks, like I just talked about, really having an agent, not just being able to utilize it like as a chat, right? Coding and reasoning, with Japanese firm Rakuten praising its accuracy for debugging, while adding a memory feature for paid users to reference past chats, improving continuity for business applications. Deep Cognito version 2, an open source model. Oh, sorry, Deep Cogito. My apologies. An open source model was launched with superior logical reasoning, potentially democratizing AI access. Wow, I'm just butchering words right now. We're getting to the end here. Hype around AGI persists, with experts like Demis Hassabis warning it's 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution, but cautioning on hype versus science. A landmark development in Anthropic's deal to offer Claude to all U.S. government branches for $1, aiming to accelerate federal AI adoption amid barriers like security and cost, potentially transforming policymaking operations. X Trends showed discussions on Claude dependencies, 80% revenue from 2 clients, and memory features with users nothing speed boost, but risks in enterprise reliance. NVIDIA's physical AI research advances robots, while NIH rejects AI-heavy funding applications, signaling regulatory scrutiny. So, long term, what are we looking at? AI could drive radical abundance, but risks overhyping AGI, job displacement, and ethical concerns. For St. Louis, obviously, we already talked about this. AI integration in biotech, such as Bayer and manufacturing, could boost innovation, but require reskilling. And we've been working a lot with building out agents, at Vi Media, for a lot of our clients, which has been amazing because we want to be able to track and measure as much data from our marketing campaigns, be able to automatically, for any lead or any opportunity, put it in their CRM, be able to properly analyze and track that person throughout the whole sales cycle. Did they close? Did they not? Why? Feed that data back, into the marketing campaign and make changes, of course, as necessary based off of what? Say it with me. The data. That's right. The data. I thought I was going to talk about Sydney Sweeney. I don't think it's that big of a deal or a deal at all. I actually thought it was a decent play on words and a decent ad campaign, which, of course, is coming from the marketing guy, right? I think it's a lot of unhappy, mad women, for the most part, upset about this Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ad. Who cares? That's why I didn't even want to talk about it. Who cares? Everyone just wants to be upset about something. There's bigger things at play. There's other things to worry about, such as what I had just discussed, unemployment, goods and everything increasing in cost, whereas salary and pay has remained fairly stagnant. Everything's becoming more expensive. People are getting laid off. We have AI and tools going after our jobs. It feels like we're getting attacked from every angle. And then, of course, online, it's one side versus the other. That's all we have for today. As always, thank you for tuning into the St. Louis Plot Podcast. Please like, review, subscribe, leave a comment, share. We appreciate everyone's support. And as always, stick around. Listen to this. Half Coast Studios here in St. Louis. This is where I record the podcast, where I'm sitting right now. They handle the distribution, the editing, all of that good stuff. If you need a podcast recording studio in St. Louis, or you just need a company to go ahead and edit and go ahead and distribute it, or you just need help with editing, or you just need help with distribution, reach out to them, halfcoaststudios.com, or of course, as always, you could type in Podcast Recording Studio St. Louis. Because Vi Media, the best damn marketing company on the planet, built a website, they're ranking 1 for that. Also, Vi Media, best damn marketing company on the planet. Reach out to them for any of your marketing needs. You'll probably talk to myself, which is great. And we handle all types of clients, but really, our main focus is on the service-based, home service-based construction and law. Now, we have clients in other industries as well, but that's kind of our main bread and butter. And as always, West County Insulation, the other company, that we started off the backbone of Vi Media almost 5 years ago now. If you're hot, if you're cold in different rooms, if your heating or AC bill is ridiculously high, you may need some insulation in your home. So go to westcountyinsulation.com or just search on Google West County Insulation. Give them a call, schedule a time. They do free quotes. They'll let you know. Or, if you don't need any help, maybe something else is an issue, they'll let you know. They'll take good care of you. westcountyinsulation.com. All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.